To the summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 13th of May of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where the Russians today on the 13th of May of 2026 launched the major massive attack through the entire territory of Ukraine, and it seems that this attack is the most important attack of the spring military campaign of 2026. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine during the day published two reports about the work of their air defense forces. This morning, the Ukrainians stated that the Russians used just 139 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. This is the number as of 8 a.m. of the 13th of May of 2026. But at 6:30 p.m., the Ukrainians published additional report, and according to this additional report, the Russians used 753 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine between 8 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. of the 13th of May of 2026. Summarizing everything, we see that the Russians used around 900 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine, and lots of explosions, lots of videos were recorded during the previous 24 hours. And somewhere around at 7 p.m., pro-Ukrainian sources published this map where we can see the approximate routes of the Russian attacks. The Russian armed forces have carried out a massive strike on Ukrainian armed forces facilities, launching around 753 drones. We're talking about the second wave of attack. Some of the drones were used for reconnaissance and to map roads for subsequent attacks, and a significant number of decoy drones were also deployed. A Ukrainian Minister of Defense advisor said the combined air attack may continue at least until midday the following day, with missile strikes expected overnight. So this is not the end. Most likely this upcoming night between the 13th and the 14th of May of 2026, the Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine also with drones, and this time using missiles as well. Hundreds of missiles of Hawana-1 type and probably several missiles of Iskander type. Lots of explosions, lots of attacks were recorded, and the question is, where is Zelensky? Yesterday in the evening, Zelensky made a statement. He said that a massive attack, a massive missile attack could begin in the near future. That was stated by the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, and later we had the report that Zelensky will arrive in Romania tomorrow in the morning, which means today on the 13th of May of 2026. And this is exactly what happened with Zelensky, and this is exactly answer to the question, where is Zelensky right now? Zelensky is on the territory of Romania. This is the moment when Zelensky and his wife arrived in Romania for the Budapest 9 summit, and here we can see the situation that Zelensky was speaking with different European leaders. So this is a common practice for Zelensky. Every time when the Russians plan to carry out another massive attack using hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, he leaves the territory Ukraine for some summit, for some meetings through Europe or maybe in the Northern America and something like this. So while Zelensky is outside of Ukraine, the Russians were bombing and attacking the state, dealing significant damage mainly to the western parts of Ukraine. So once again, this is the map that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and as you can see, we have lots of yellow lines, which means that the Russians were using only drones. We don't have red lines, green lines, orange lines, blue lines, which means that the Russians haven't used missiles during the previous day attack. The Russians were using just drones, and as you can see, the main number of explosions are taking place through the western parts of Ukraine. We have no explosions in the central or in the eastern part, just explosions through the western parts of Ukraine. And this is exactly what the Russians were trying to achieve, to attack the western parts of Ukraine as close as possible to the NATO borders, as deep as possible on the territory of Ukraine, showing that Ukrainians currently suffer huge problems with air defense systems. And these are the pictures that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources on the matter of positions of Russian drones during the day. So these are the pictures that describe the situation between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. of the 13th of May of 2026. Once again, I would like to point to attention that the Russians were using hundreds of drones, and if we follow these pictures one by one from 11 p.m. till 3 from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. of the 13th of May of 2026, you will notice that the number of drones weren't reducing. So the Russians were launching more and more, and we see that there are more and more drones in the sky of Ukraine, and we see that maybe, for example, somewhere by 3 p.m. we can count less drones in comparison with the moment when the Russians launched them. And the most important message that I'm trying to send you is that the Ukrainians had huge problems with air defense. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine stated that they managed to bring down almost everything, that just probably 50 drones of the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to hit the target. But according to these pictures that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources, we see that at least nothing was destroyed or intercepted by the Ukrainians through the eastern parts of Ukraine. Almost nothing was destroyed in the central part of Ukraine, and probably something was destroyed in the western parts of Ukraine, but we can't say for sure because the Russians were tasked to attack the western parts of Ukraine. So now it's very difficult to say whether this drone was destroyed by the Ukraine air defense or this drone attacked a building in the western parts of Ukraine, because in the first and in the second case we will have an explosion. So now let's discuss the targets that the Russians were attacking. According to information we have, the Russians were attacking the settlement of Khmelnytsky. In this picture we can see black smoke over the city. Here we have another video from the territory of Khmelnytsky. We can see the same black smoke, but from another angle, not just a picture but a video, which means that something was destroyed, maybe a fuel depot or an oil base or something like this. And lots of explosions were recorded almost along the border with Hungary. We have explosions, and the sources are saying that as for this situation, the Russians attacked an object of energy infrastructure. Probably a substation was damaged and destroyed on the territory of this city.
Til dig, der var ung i 80'erne. Til dig, der husker energikriserne og bilfri søndag. Vi er gået fra 0 bekymringer til rynker over energiregningen.
Lots of explosions were recorded through the settlement in the area of the city of Lvov, almost in the most western parts of Ukraine. This is the settlement of Zhovkva, and here we have something that was damaged with the Russian drones, and we can see a black smoke over this part. As of now, the sources are saying that the electrical substation Zhovkva 110 has been hit by the Russian drones. Also, lots of explosions were recorded around the settlement of Rovna, and as for this city, lots of explosions were recorded in the area of the settlement of Zdabuldniv. And here we can see civilians that were making a video along railways, and here we can see a Russian drone that was flying over this territory. And in the final part of this video, we can see that the Russians attacked the railway station of this area or something like this. So this is the third or the second or the third attack on objects of energy infrastructure of Ukraine through the western parts. Also, we have lots of explosions on the territory of the city of Lutsk. As for this territory, we have a fire and we have the central part of the city, and the sources are saying that the Russians attacked an SBU building. So SBU is a special service, a special secret service in Ukraine that was hit by the Russians with drones. So the most important thing of these attacks is that the Russians were attacking Ukraine during the daylight, because we have discussed lots of targets that were hit by Russians, some object of energy infrastructure along the border with Hungary, an object of energy infrastructure along the border with Poland, a railway station around the city of Rovna, an SBU building on the territory of Lutsk, something on the territory of Khmelnytsky. So, summarizing everything, the Russians haven't attacked anything that couldn't be attacked during the night period of time. But the Russians were attacking during the day. So, civilians could see consequences of attacks, explosions. So, civilians could have possibilities to make videos, to publish these videos in the internet, and to show the real consequences of the Russian massive attacks. So this is the first thing. The second thing why the Russians attacked the territory of Ukraine not overnight, because they're planning to carry out another attack overnight. But another important thing is that during these massive attacks, the Russians began making important statements. The Russians stated, the Kremlin has stated that for ceasefire negotiations to begin in Ukraine, Kiev must order the Ukrainian military to withdraw from Donbas and other Russian regions. This is the statement, official statement of the Russian sources. Following this, negotiations may proceed. Moscow always demands that Ukraine abandon its bid to join NATO, adopt a neutral status, and recognize new territorial realities. So this is an official statement that was made by Russians. Furthermore, today another important law was adopted by Russians. The State Duma has adopted a law on the use of the Russian armed forces to protect Russian citizens abroad. The law was developed to protect the rights of Russian citizens in case of their arrest, detention, criminal and other persecution. The Speaker of the State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, commented on the law, noting that Western justice has become an instrument of repression against unwanted individuals. So these two things are very important. So the day attack, the Russian statement, if you don't want to see these explosions during the day, Zelensky must make a decision. But instead of making this very difficult decision, Zelensky is on Romania on some European summit. Another important thing, that's during the previous 24 hours, several drones were recorded on the territory of Moldova. And this video was published by local sources. And here we can see probably a Russian drone flying over the state of Moldova in the direction of the western parts of Ukraine. Maybe this is not the Russian drone, but maybe the Russian. Anyway, we have these updates on this matter as well. So this is the situation with the massive attack. Once again, this attack hasn't been finished. Most likely the Russians will continue. And we have a statement on this matter. Russia has launched a combined strike on critical targets. The attack can last up to 3 days. That was stated by main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. It is reported that the attack will be carried out in 2 waves. First wave attack with Shocks drones. The second wave, the use of a significant number of air and sea-based cruise missiles as well as ballistic missiles. So the most important attack is just ahead of us. But once again, I would like to point your attention, we have discussed a lot of these strikes. The Russians were attacking objects that they could attack during the night, and the Russians have attacked objects that can be attacked just with drones. Now, I'm saying that there is no need to attack, let's say, these substations with missiles. So if Russians are planning to use missiles, which most likely means that the Russians are planning to attack something more important that they attacked during the previous 24 hours. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, with 24 hours, we received lots of interesting changes. And first, let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians during the previous day improved their position significantly by sending additional sabotage and reconnaissance groups in the direction of the city of Orekhov. But furthermore, it seems that the Russians repelled the Ukrainian Western Zaporozhye counteroffensive operation, and now the Russians began their own counteroffensive operation with the purpose to restore control over the territories the Russians lost during the May and April and March of 2026. Furthermore, these days and these hours, we received lots of updates through the eastern Zaporozhye direction, and it seems that the line between the villages of Charivnya, Gulyai-Polska, Verkhnya Tersa, and Vozdrizhevka is about to collapse, and the Russians are about to take this territory under complete control.
Ja, og nu er du tilbage fra frokost.
Som tidligere tordengud elsker jeg mit nye job her hos DCC Energi. Og jeg stopper ikke, før vi for alvor er på landkort.
DCC Energi. Ja, det kan vi sagtens hjælpe med.
Følelsen af at have bestilt rejsen er næsten lige så vidunderlig som
Another important area is the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received a report that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly through the eastern flank of the settlement. And these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 12th of May, and this is the end of the 13th of May of 2026. The Russians, as you can see, answered the settlement of Molocharovka, and currently there are very heavy clashes for this village. If Russians, as a result of offensive operation, are able to establish complete control, let's say, over these territories and to improve their eastern flank significantly like this can lead to complete collapse of the entire defenses of the city of Konstantinovka and the collapse of the pockets between the cities of Konstantinovka and Chasiv Yar. So we're talking about these territories, and the Ukrainians probably would be forced to either fall back from this area or they would be caught in cauldron by the Russians, but most likely they will stay in this area because the Ukrainians most likely will try to win as much as possible time before the beginning of the major battle for the Donbas. We are talking about the line between the cities of Drushkovka, Kramatorsk and Slaviansk, and it seems that this battle is going to start very, very soon. And this massive attack that took place during the previous 24 hours has just one purpose, to allow the Russians to begin their major offensive operation in the Donbas direction, and either to force Zelensky to withdraw troops from this area or at least to damage the logistics, warehouses, ammo depots before the beginning of this general and major battle. We have covered most of the updates regarding the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. Now let's discuss a few more important global updates, and let's talk about China. Because